Hey everybody, welcome to Sid's Little Corner of the Internet. We've got a third-party transforming figure review for you. This time around we're going to be taking a look at the Newage Toys No.27 David. So this is their take on a Legend scale Optimus Prime, and I got to tell you, this is one awesome little masterpiece figure. But let's go ahead and get into it, and we'll start with that packaging. And yeah, right up at the top you have mobile base and all that, and apparently that means Matrix of Leadership. And over here you have your artwork, and it says something Battle David back there maybe. And then you can see the base converts. He's number 27 David. Over here you have some artwork with a little sticker over it, and back here you have a product shot where he's using his energon axe against Megatron. And then down here you have all your warnings. No sad babies this time. Sorry about that. And you've got Newage, made in China. Over here, this is kind of funny. I enjoy this. So you've got some more artwork. You've got Battle David. And then down here, this writing, it just cracks me up. Exciting! The track changes into the, or the truck changes into the robot. The trailer is a secret base. That is very, very exciting. And then down here at the bottom, you've got some tech specs, I guess, if you want to call them that. So that is it for the packaging. It's kind of cool. I enjoy it. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and see what came inside that box. Behold, laid out here before you is everything that came inside that box with David, and we're going to start right here in the front with his sheet of instructions. So oddly enough, they have them folded where you can't really see them, but there you go. There's a little sneak peek. Gives you everything you need to know there. So you do get that little sheet of instructions. And then you have this plethora of accessories right here. So we'll start right in the middle with those hands. You do get two fist hands. Now these are the hands that were mounted on him in the box. I've already swapped them out because I like the hands on the hips kind of look. But these hands, other than being mirror images of each other, are identical. So I will do my best here to bring them in without having my hands in the way. And you can see, yep, they're fists. They're blue fists. No doubt about it. And nothing amazing there. They just have the port for the weapons. And there's the other one. And then you do get the pointy fingers. Now, the pointy fingers, oddly enough, still came with the sprue connecting them. So I just don't have the heart to break them off of the sprue. I really want to use the pointy fingers, but I'm not ready to break them off yet. So yeah, they're really cool. I really like the pointy fingers. So there you go. Again, nothing incredibly amazing there, just pointy fingers. And I like them. Alright, so the next thing, we'll take a look at those other hands when we get to the figure himself, but the next thing we'll take a look at here is the energon axe. So this is pretty cool. It just plugs either directly into the port at the end of his forearm, or if you want, you can have the fisty hand holding the energon axe as well. So it really depends on how you want to do it. If you want to have that, you're certainly welcome to do so. Otherwise, you can just plug it right into the end of his forearm. But yeah, this looks pretty good. It's translucent, and it's a nice hard plastic, so you can poke yourself with it if you want to. It's really up to you. But yeah, looks pretty good. I like it. Next up, we'll take a look at his rifle. And this is the classic Optimus Prime rifle. You just got this big stem here. This is the exact same rifle that came with the Newage Octavian, which was the Newage take on Ultra Magnus. So yeah, there's nothing new here. It's just a good looking weapon on both sides. Looks good. A little bit of paint right in there. So yeah, he looks good holding it, as he should, because he's Optimus Prime. I mean, David. All right, so then the next thing leaves us with these two little guys right here. So let's go ahead and bring in Rover. Look at Rover. He's adorable. This is cool. I'm smitten by the little Rover. He rolls so well. He's got the little red light up there. You've got room for really tiny little human figures that you could put in there. He does come with these vestigial pegs back here. There's really nothing to plug them in, but for those of you who remember the G1 Rover, and we'll see that later on in the review, these were the pegs that would plug in to launch Rover out of the trailer. So just a nice touch that they kept these on. They serve no purpose, but it's good that they have them on there. And of course, as you might expect, you can rotate this section right here, and you've got a big hole right there, and then you can have Rover towing, or roller, did I say rover? You could have a roller towing the trailer, and you could just tow it right on out of the frame. All right, so speaking of the trailer, let's go ahead and bring that in. This is a nice little work of art. I do like this. Now, I'm going to cover this a little bit later, but I'm also going to mention it right now. My only issues with this entire set, particularly when it comes to molding, is just the mold flow lines that's present in there, and I hope that they're coming through. They're not major at all, but you can kind of see just right in this area on both sides. They've done their best. I don't know how, but they've done their best to make it almost symmetrical, but they are present there. So it's not a detraction by any means. It's just something that you're going to notice. But everything else on this, it just looks wonderful. So there you have that. There you have that. And from the top. And then you've got your little stilts down here, which is a great touch. Love the fact that they added these stilts. And you can tuck those away. Great amount of detail done under here. Even a spare tire. Now, if you could get your fingers in there, you could actually see that the spare tire rotates as well. So that's pretty cool. And then you have these major stilts that come out. And then you're going to want to flip them like this in order to balance the trailer when you open the trailer up. So these front stilts are to actually keep the trailer level. And then these are used when you unfold the trailer. So kind of interesting way that they do that, but there you go. And some detail under there as well. And then you do have the ability, before we open this guy up, you do have the ability to take this piece off, and then this piece, we'll see it later, will join with the little cockpit robot that's in here. And then you can have like a little mobile robot that rolls around. So really cool. All right. Also, this is a really handy dandy storage place for your fists. So just something to keep in mind there. All right, plug that back in, and let's open this trailer up. So just crack those doors open and give it a pull a la G1. And there you go. So you've got this little ramp right here. You can just grab this ramp and bring it down. Perfect. Love it. All right, and then as you would expect, you have this that you can raise up. And yeah, it looks fantastic. We're going to go into greater detail on all of this later, but sorry if I'm being redundant in a couple of the segments, but this is just so cool. He's just so much fun to play with. You can lift this little radar dish up. Yeah, just really cool. So he does come with all of that stuff, which is fantastic. And fold those up. Oop, lift my ramp out. Fold the ramp in. There we go. And conveniently enough, of course, roller does store in there along with everything else. So that is it for everything that came inside that box, except for David himself, which we will now bring in and we'll take a look at his details and just admire him. Here he is, the teeny tiny leader of the legend-scaled third-party Autobots. This is the Newage David, aka Optimus Prime. And before we go any further, there was one accessory that I completely forgot to show in the last segment, and I think it's only of utmost importance for us to show it now, and that is the matrix of leadership. So he does come with a matrix, and for its size, it looks pretty darn good. I have no complaints here. This looks good. And of course, as any good leader should, we'll just put this in his chest, and we will move on. So let's drop that in. Bada boom, bada bing. Look at that. That is phenomenal. Love it. All right. So now that we've got that out of the way and took care of that final accessory, let's go ahead and deal with David after I do a quick camera adjustment here. Whoa, where are you going? So there we go. He looks good. For a little guy, man, looks great. My biggest complaint is just the size of his chest. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll take a look at that head sculpt. And yeah, that looks great. What a for being so small. Look at this. It just, man, oh man. I don't mean to sound like I'm fawning over it, but I'm kind of fawning over it. But yeah, there you go. And then coming down to that chest, Looks good from the front, no doubt. If you look at it from the top, you can see what I'm talking about. This is, you know, obviously the faux front of the vehicle. And of course they had to make room for the Matrix. So the real front of the vehicle is back behind there. And it makes him a little puffy. But from the front, you'd never know. He just looks really good. And they definitely have a nice G1 vibe going with this guy. He looks so darn good. Coming down, looking at that grill, and you've got those silvers right there. Coming down, looking at those yellows. Great sculpt work in those legs. Coming down to those feet. All that looks good. Coming up the side here. Let me get this arm out of the way. Coming up the side. Looks good. I like what they've done here with these calves where they kind of bulge them out so he's not just a flat line back there. No hollow areas to speak of. So you can kind of see where everything folds up under there. And then there is the actual cab window assembly back there behind the faux assembly. But yeah, it all comes together looking pretty good. Coming down to these arms. Nice red. You've got those chevrons right there. And then these are the hands I was talking about. So these are the nice spread hands where you can high five somebody, put them on your hips, whatever you want to do. Got those nice chrome smokestacks there as well. And taking a look at him from the back. No complaints. Look at this guy. He looks good even from the back. Biggest issue would be you can see a couple screws and you can see slightly hollow areas for those panels, but they did a good job of covering that up as well as they could based on the design. So for a figure this size, it really doesn't get a lot better than this. He just looks so good. I really hope it's coming across on camera. Now, let's get him turned around and we will talk about his articulation, of which he has a considerable amount. And as we always do, we will start at that head. So the head's on a ball joint, so you get a pretty good amount of motion. You can get a little bit of side-to-side quizzical look. You can get an incredible amount of up. So he's way up there. And you get a decent amount of down, but he's not going to look over that chest anyway. But yeah, pretty good amount. If you really wanted to, you could disconnect this and give him that raised up look if he needs to periscope. So you can do that if you want to, because why not? That's kind of fun. All right, moving down to the shoulders. So the shoulders will come straight out that way, and then you can go full 360 all the way around. Now, due to the transformation, you can get a little bit of butterfly there too, but I don't really count that. But due to the transformation, you have a hinge joint right here. If you wanted to take advantage of it, like if you needed to get a little bit of an extra, I don't know, wanted to do something like that, you could use that. I don't think it's really meant for posing, but you could totally get away with it if you wanted to. But you do have the bicep rotation. Now all these joints are pretty tight on mine, so no complaining, but you do have that bicep rotation. And then when you come down here, because these hands just simply plug in to that port, you do have full 360 of the wrist rotation. And then you, on these hands in particular, you can swing them out that far, you can swing them in that far. So I don't know if you wanted to, oh, it looks like something really bad happened there. You could totally do that and get away with it. All right, coming down to the waist, you get full waist rotation, and you do get an ab crunch. So there you go. I mean, that's pretty significant. If you really wanted to stretch it, you could do something like that. And now we're just getting silly. That's just silly. You could pull him out, do something like that if you wanted to. If you wanted to scare the kids, ooga booga. So totally up to you if you want to do that. Now down here to the legs, you gotta just make sure you keep these hip skirts out of the way before you start swinging everything too far. So just proactively bring all those hip skirts out, flare him, and then you can have something like that. And then you can bring those out, and I want to show you this. Come on now. That is the best Van Damme set of splits I've ever seen on a Legends class figure. Look at that. He's got to be in pain. That's phenomenal. All right, so kicking forward, again, almost like the splits, you can get an incredible amount of forward kick. And moving that butt flap out of the way, you can get a decent amount of back kick, probably more than you're ever going to need or use. And then you have thigh rotation, you can go all the way around. And then down here at the knees, just on this single joint, you can get 90. And then you do have a secondary joint right down here where you can get a really nice deep knee bend. So those double jointed knees go a long way. If you wanted to keep that together right there, you could just bend right there, totally up to you, however you want to do that. So really good articulation in those knees. Coming down here to the feet, maybe this might be his most limited area. They're not bad at all. We'll start with that ankle tilt. You can get a good amount of ankle tilt out of him. And then if we look up underneath here, just to maybe this way might be the best, because they're on a ball joint, you do get a little bit of down, you do get a little bit of up, and then you do have the heel where you can make some adjustments there as well. But because of this geometry right back here, you're just not going to get a lot of up and down on this figure. If you do your ankle tilt, you can get a lot of this action, but you know, you're not going to get a lot of up and down. It's not a complaint by any means. It's just going to be one of those situations where if you had a little bit more, you know, you could, you know, maybe have something like that going on. And you're not going to balance for me now? Is it because the camera's on? There we go. Where you could have, you know, something like that. And if you could have had those toes coming forward just a little bit more, give him a more natural look. It looks like he's trying to scare people right now. But anyway, yeah, that's it for the articulation. I think it's very well done. You're not going to want for much at all on this figure. Maybe a little bit more in the head, maybe a little bit more in those feet, but really nice tight joints, good range of motion. Not much you're not going to be able to do with this guy. So now that we have the articulation and the details out of the way, let's go ahead and we're going to get this guy accessorized up, and we're just going to show him off just using all of his toys. So let's do it. All right, come on, be honest. Doesn't this make you feel like a kid? This is everything that I wanted to do with my G1 Prime. And I couldn't do it because of the limitations of the time with engineering and manufacturing. And now we have the opportunity to have poses like this, and in legend scale, no less. This is fantastic. I love, love, love this, and I hope you do as well. And yes, as an added bonus, that gun is blast effect compatible. I really wish these guns would have been, but they're just a little too small. I'm sure this wasn't necessarily by design, but it works out really well. And as you can see, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned was that David, aka Optimus Prime, does have a 3mm flight stand port that you can throw him on and get some incredible poses. And of course, you can see he has his battle axe, and he's got roller tow in the trailer. Well, he's not really towing the trailer because the trailer's in stationary mode right now, but roller's ready to tow that trailer. And this just, it cracks me up. I love it. It makes me a kid again, no doubt about it. So yeah, wanted to show this off, all the things that you could do with those accessories, and he absolutely has a wonderful, wonderful shelf presence. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and we'll get him into his vehicle mode, and we'll take a look at him from there. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Oh my and goodness, would you look at this? This just screams G1 Optimus Prime. This thing is absolutely gorgeous for a legend scaled figure. Man, talk about bringing back some memories. He's not perfect by any means. I mean, the back of that cab where the hitch is at, we'll look at that in a little more detail here in a moment. But, you know, there just aren't many Optimus Primes out there in their alt mode that looks good in that hitch area anyway. This one does a pretty good job of pulling it off, but that cab, man, it looks good. I just wanted to throw him on the turntable here just for a moment so we could get a nice 360 of him without my fingers being in the way, and with just a nice stable view of this alt mode, because he just looks good all the way around. So what we'll do, we'll get him off that turntable, and then we'll go into the details. We'll focus on that trailer first, and then we'll make our way to the cab, and then we'll go on from there. But I wanted to show this to you guys just so you can see how awesome this figure looks in his alt mode, just unencumbered by my hands. So there you go. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into that trailer, and we're going to start right up front with what I think is one of the cool little things they did not have to add. He has stilts. So very much like the Masterpiece trailer, he does have these little stilts that just fold right up and get out of your way. So yay, very, very cool. So let's go ahead and fold those up. We're just going to start over here and take a look at that, and you see, much like the G1, he's got that little circle right there. He, of course, does not have an Autobot symbol because this is a third-party, not a licensed Hasbro figure, but everything else is almost just like the G1. The little stilts that come out right here, those look great. And then you've got the wheels down here. And of course, as we'll see, this comes off and you can use part of this to weaponize that base. And coming around to the back, he does indeed have tail lights. So very cool. Got a little bit of molded detail in there. And then this side looks eerily similar to the other side. Yay for symmetry. And then there's the top. And then down here is the bottom. And so many little details they didn't need to put in. Look at this sculpt work in there, and then just down in this area, down on the bottom right there. Really, really cool that they added all this stuff into the trailer. So now that we've taken a look at the details, there's not a whole lot to see on the outside. Let's go ahead and open this trailer up. And what we'll do is we'll bring these stilts out so you can swing those out. And you could do this if you want. We'll just leave them like that. We'll swing them out on both sides, and they do have hard stops right there, so that's as far as they go. And then coming around here to the back, just going to open those doors up, and then give it the old pry just like you would with that G1 toy. And opening it up, you see all this cool detail in there. Really, really, really well done. And then this right here, my gosh, look at this. Just like the G1 toy, this comes up. And you have your little claw that comes out. The claw will open up. And then you have just a ton of articulation right here that you can do. Very much like G1. And then you can lift his little radar dish up. And then, I didn't mean to, but yes, that does come off. So if for whatever reason you wanted to take it off, you could. And yeah, there he goes. Oh, I forgot the ramp. Goodness gracious. So let's flip these out. There you go. Now, the only thing missing here, that's right, you guessed it, is a roller. So there he is. We saw him earlier in the accessories, but he's back. And, you know, he's got the little pegs, just like the G1, but there's nowhere for him to spring load, shoot from like the G1 toy. But it's nice that they added it in there. So that's really cool. And, you know, you can, of course, flip this around and then have him tow the trailer if you want him to tow the trailer. So you just plug it in. And there you have a roller doing some towing. I really hope he's got a high torque engine because he's just a little guy. But yeah, so that is the trailer for the most part. And the ramp's a little sharp. So, you know, you're going to have some interference there, but you can pretend. Boom. And there you have it. So, before we get any further along, now that we've got the trailer all laid out, we'll bring in a couple of trailer comparisons here with the roller comparison so you can see what's going on and see how this Legend scale matches up to some of the other Optimus Prime trailers that are out there. Alright, so for our first trailer / roller comparison, this is the trailer and roller from my G1 Optimus Prime, so you can see how those guys look together. Moving right along, our next comparison is the trailer and roller that came with the MP10 Optimus Prime, so you can see the Legend scale on the left, Masterpiece scale on the right. And for our final trailer / roller comparison, this is the trailer on the right that came with the Earthrise Leader Class Optimus Prime. Now, I've got a couple of cheats here. So this roller doesn't come with him. That's just one that I 3D printed. Same thing with that little radar dish up there. So it's not exactly shown as you would purchase it, but just to give you a sense of scale there, the Legends scale really isn't that much smaller than a modern Leader Class. So there you go. All right, now that we're done with the trailer comparisons, let's go ahead and bring the cab in and we'll look at some details there and then get into the cab comparisons. So I almost forgot to show you this, and I'm really glad that I didn't forget. But this is one of the things that you could do with some of those trailer components. So of course this is the little arm that's inside of his trailer, and then down here, those are the wheels from the bottom of the trailer that you can just take off. And then you can combine these two to give yourself a little mobile robot repair attack unit, whatever you want to use him for. So that's really cool. I really like this. You just got to be careful. He can get a little top heavy, obviously, when you extend him, when he's on such a small base right there. But this is really, really cool. So a nice little touch that they put in there just adds that value and adds that playability. So very cool. There you go. He's tiny, but he's mighty. Let's go ahead and take a look at that cab for David and get into those details. And let's just give you that overall look first, since we didn't have him the full view because he was on the trailer earlier. So to just give you that full effect, you can see he gets a little long back here. But I think for the most part, he does all right. So let's start up here with that close-up and look at the best part of him, no doubt. That cab, the front of this thing, man, oh man, for being legend scaled, isn't that gorgeous? That's just so pretty. All those chromes, and you got that red, and then you've got that blue translucent plastic for those windows. Coming around to the side here, everything comes together pretty well. So for those of you who are familiar with the Newage Ultra Magnus or Octavian, you're going to see a lot of similarities here because, at least from the waist up, this is the same transformation. The legs are a little bit different, but by no means difficult. So everything you do up here is going to be the same that you would with Octavian. And you got those nice chrome fuel tanks right there. And everything looks all right there. Big feet hanging out the back, but man, there just aren't that many perfect Optimus Prime cabs out there. There it is from the top. Other side, looks good. Coming down to the bottom, everything hides away pretty well, so you don't really know what you're looking at. You can kind of make out some upper leg right there. At least you've got some gray back here. This is, of course, his feet. So if you did these red, you would see those on his toes. So they did it gray for the toes. I've got my toes just a little crooked there. So the one thing that I would say is you've got a little bit of a gap right here. It's not that big of a deal, and you're going to use it a lot anyway, because in order to take the trailer off, you actually have to pull him apart a little bit right there in order to get that mushroom out of there. That's what secures the trailer onto the cab. Yeah, this guy looks really, really nice in this mode. So not really anything to complain about unless you really want to get picky and say there's a lot of stuff going on back here and maybe he should have stopped right there. But when you got the trailer on, it's really not that bad. All right, so now that we've got that out of the way, we will do some cab comparisons and see how he looks compared to some other primes from different lines. So for our first cab comparison, here you see the Newage David on the left, and on the right is my G1 Optimus Prime. Moving on to our next comparison, this is the Leader Class Earthrise Optimus Prime from the War for Cybertron trilogy. Here we see David next to the Core Class Optimus Prime from the War for Cybertron trilogy. And as you can see, the Core Class is just a little bit smaller than the Legend scale. Speaking of the Legend scale, here we see David with his Newage compatriot. This is the Newage Octavian, or their take on Ultra Magnus, in his Albino Prime cab mode. And like I said earlier, basically from the cab forward, they're the exact same transformation. The difference here is just going to be what's going on back here for those legs. Taking a look at a Legend scaled comparison from a competing third-party manufacturer, this is the Magic Square Overlord. This is their take on a Legend scaled Motor Master, so you can see how two different companies look in that Legend scale when it comes to their semi-cabs. Just because I figured why not. This is the Jada Toys non-transformable Optimus Prime, so this is just the cab of Optimus Prime, and he doesn't turn into anything, but if you want, you could see the Optimus Prime down there. So yeah, there you go. And for our final cab comparison, here we see David next to the Masterpiece MP10 Optimus Prime. So you can see the Legend scale on the left, Masterpiece scale on the right. Well, I can't speak for anyone but myself, but I think it's about time to throw that trailer on the cab, and we'll do full truck comparisons and see how these guys stack up. yeah, so for that first trailer cab combo comparison, I think this really tells the story right here. This is a cool shot, at least in my opinion. So of course over here on the left you get the little guy, the Newage David, and then making our way over to the right you have the War for Cybertron Earthriser Kingdom Leader Class Optimus Prime. You've got the original G1 Optimus Prime, and then on the far right you have MP10 Optimus Prime. So this kind of runs the gamut, and man, this is really cool to see. So I hope you enjoy this. And for that final trailer and cab comparison, here we have the Newage David with a couple of other Legend-scaled semi-trucks. So in the middle you have the Overlord, or Motor Master. This is the Magic Square take on Motor Master with his ginormous trailer. And on the right you have the Newage Octavian, which is very similar to the Newage David, but of course this is their version of Ultra Magnus. So there you go. All right, that's going to do it for the alt mode comparisons, so it's time to roll out and let's get him back into his robot mode and do some comparisons there. For our first bot mode comparison, here we see David next to my G1 Optimus Prime. Moving right along to our next comparison, this is the War for Cybertron Core Class Optimus Prime. Just because I wanted to, here he is next to the Transformers Red Optimus Prime. This is a non-transformable figure, basically just a action figure of Optimus. Moving along to our next comparison, this is the War for Cybertron Leader Class Optimus Prime, Earthrise Kingdom, take your pick. Here he is next to MP10, the Masterpiece Optimus Prime. Moving along to our next comparison, here we see him next to a couple of other Legend-scaled figures. So in the middle is the Newage Octavian, that's their take on Ultra Magnus. This is his Albino Prime mode. And on the right is the Magic Square Overlord, that's their take on a Legend-scaled Motor Master. And finally, just for fun, here he is next to the Masterpiece MP49 Nemesis Prime. So this is the same mold as the MP44 Optimus, just in that Nemesis Prime attire. That's going to do it for the comparison, so let's go ahead and get into those final thoughts. So let's go ahead and talk real briefly about the Newage number 27 David, aka Optimus Prime. This is a fantastic Legend-scaled figure. It really doesn't get much better than this, and he is an absolutely wonderful homage to Optimus Prime. Just all kinds of fun to be had here, but let's go ahead and dive into it, and we'll start with the overall aesthetics. The overall look of this figure, there's very little to complain about here, and I think even the word complain is a bit of a misnomer, but a couple of minor things here. On the figure itself, his chest is thick. It sticks out a little far, so he just looks like he's got a big poofy chest. Would have liked to have seen that slimmed down. I totally get why they did it because of the transformation and the design that they use, but it can be a little distracting from the side. From the front, it's not that bad at all. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not horrible one bit, but I'm just kind of struggling to look for things to talk about here. Secondarily, the hip skirts, they work really well. I just, when you have him in some action poses, as you can see here, you know, those hip skirts can become kind of distracting. So, not the worst thing in the world, but, you know, I don't know how they could have done them better, but they just don't look quite 100% right. And then when you have him in his truck mode, he's just got that long hitch area, that long rear end of the cab. And it's primarily because of his feet, the way they designed his feet for the transformation here. I would have liked to have seen what they had done with Octavian, their take on Ultra Magnus, which is just a little bit shorter of a hitch area, a little more compact, and I liked the way that worked out better than what they did for David. However, everything else on this guy is top-notch. He looks so cool. I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 on the aesthetics. Moving on to the articulation. You're going to want for very little here. I mean, if we're going to pick on anything, I guess it would be if we could have had double jointed elbows. You know, you still get that 90+ degree bend, but I mean, if I'm going to pick, maybe we could have gotten a little bit more of a bend, and maybe, you know, they could have done something more with those feet as far as a little bit more up and down. But other than that, I mean, there's nothing to complain about here. You get ab crunch, waist rotation, all kinds of articulation and fluid movement everywhere. Even his hands are great. For a Legend-scaled figure, Of course, you don't get those individually articulated fingers because they're incredibly tiny, but the open palm hands that he gets, you do have the ability to move them up and down as well as the rotation. So just all kinds of thoughtful little considerations there for articulation. So this guy is almost perfect in articulation. I'm going to give him a 10 out of 10. Now, moving on to accessories. Kind of similar to the articulation here, what more could you possibly want in a legend scaled figure? This guy comes with everything Optimus Prime is supposed to have. He has the Matrix, he has his rifle, he has his energon axe, he has his trailer, he has a roller. You know, he comes with a good assortment of different hands. So there's very little here that you could really ask for as far as the legend scaled figures go, particularly for Optimus Prime. He just has it all. So I am going to give him a rare 10 out of 10 on accessories. I just don't know what they could have done to make it better here. Moving on to quality. Quality's great. I have a couple of very minor issues, and I do mean minor. We'll talk about them here real quick. Number one, this little cockpit area right here, it just pops off. It's on a tab. It just pops off way too easy as you're handling it. It's not a tight tab. It's not detrimental in any way. I could take this and flip it upside down right now and it's not going to fall off. It just falls off as you're handling it. Secondly, you do have some flow lines in the trailers, or in both sides of the trailer here, just from that molding process. They're not bad, but they are there. You can see them. The nice thing is, don't know how they pulled it off, but at least they're symmetrical. So it almost looks intentional, but it's not. So those are really my only quality issues. Everything else, he came with everything he was supposed to. Joints are tight. Everything works. Everything on the figure itself tabs in really well. So no complaints whatsoever, just kind of struggling to try to find a couple of those quality issues. But for the price point, I am going to mention them because I expected this price point for everything to be almost perfect as far as quality goes. So I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 on overall quality. Bringing us to our last bullet, which is overall value. You get an amazing amount of engineering, detail, design, thoughtfulness, little perks, little extras here that absolutely make this figure so much fun to handle, to transform, to display. There's very, very little to complain about here, but it does come at a cost. You know, this is a masterpiece level engineering in a legend scaled figure, so it doesn't come cheap. So I paid, I bought this figure on tfsource.com, and I paid $100 US for this figure. That's kind of salty, but I have no regrets here. For everything that you get in this figure, I mean, this is the iconic Optimus Prime through and through, and he is everything that when I was a kid, I imagined that I could do with my G1 Prime, and this guy can pull it off. So it's just really, really cool to see this. I do think that it is a bit of a high price point, and I know that that's going to restrict some people from being able to pick him up, so that's really going to be my lowest score here. So for overall value, I'm going to give this guy an 8 out of 10. I think if you have the means, you absolutely should pick this figure up. He is wonderful in almost every sense of the word, and I have zero regrets about picking him up. Just would like to see slightly more competitive price out there to maybe open the market up to more people who don't necessarily have the means right now to get this figure. So with that, that is going to bring us to our final total. So out of a possible 50 points, the Newage David gets 46 out of 50, which puts him at 92%. Makes this figure super easy to recommend. Like I said, my only caveat is just that price. If you have the means, pick him up. You're going to love him. And if you don't have the means, hopefully someday you do. And I think that this would be a great figure to add into the collection. So with that, that's going to wrap the review up. I hope you guys got some good information out of this. I hope you were entertained. And if you haven't already done so, please be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe and leave some comments. Let me know what you think about the channel, about David, or about life. And until we see you guys in the next review, take care.